Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to today's upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? All right, so today's upload, I had two very interesting and very quick phone calls yesterday. One that actually pertains to yesterday's upload at the location of Bottle Creek Indian Mounds. And very, very interesting call. And I said it in the upload how nice of a young man Grayson is. And he's 22 years old. You know, I'm 48. I'm going to be 49 this year, so I can call him a young man. And he actually got in touch with his friend Jasper, the other young man that was with him on that fateful day, and asked him if he would be willing to talk with me for a moment just to verify the events that happened. And when he texted me, I said, "Hey, how are you?" And I said, "The upload's up, check it out." And he said, "I just got done listening to it. I want you to speak with Jasper if you've got a few minutes, just so you know that everything I said in that upload was 100%. And I was like, "Listen," I go, "I talked to you for an hour and a half the other night." I go, I believe you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have shared it." And he said, "All right, well, please." And I said, "Sure, I'll talk to Jasper. Give me a couple of minutes because I'm in the middle of some things." And I ended up speaking with him. And then right after that, I had actually had a phone call set up prior to, and I ended up speaking to a retired police officer who wanted to share his experience with me, which is absolutely really mind-blowing because of the amount of information and the amount of experiences he had in a very short period of time. And it's still going on to this day. So let's get into it. So first conversation, the one with Jasper, right after the phone call, text and phone call with Grayson, I said, "Have him give me a call. If he's free right now, I'm free. I got a couple of minutes, and have him give me a call." Instantly, I answer the phone, "Jasper, Mr. Nadolny." And I'm like, oh my God. I don't think I've ever been called Mr. Nadolny by somebody ever, the amount of respect from both of these young men were just really awesome. And I've said this time and time again. I've met a lot of people, and prior to the channel, not so much. I lived in upstate New York. I went to Maine, to where my family's house are, and lived in Florida for a little bit, a couple months. But other than that, I've been isolated in the upstate New York area. About that, I had to clear my throat. And so the second my channel started to grow and I started to interview people out of the South is when I started to realize that people from the South are just so genuine and so nice, like amazingly nice. And the first person ever was DJ. The guy was just unbelievably kind, a lot of compassion, and just, these people from the South are just amazing people. So brings us back to Jasper. And I said, all right, I guess, I don't know if you heard the upload. And he said, I heard a little bit of it. He said, I heard our experience. He goes, I didn't listen to the rest of the upload. I'm going to. And you've got a new subscriber, he said. So I was like, well, thank you very much. I said, please don't call me Mr. Nadolny. I said, I guess Grayson wanted me to talk to you in regards to, and he said, let me tell you the experience through my eyes. He said, it's pretty much exactly the same as Grayson's. We kayaked out. The day started out, it was kind of muggy. There was a lot of mosquitoes out. It was not a pleasant trip in. They were sweaty, they were getting bit by bugs, and other than it being sunny out, it was not ideal, so right from the very beginning, he said it was just something that he had wished they could have done at a different time. And he said, I don't know if that has anything to do with exactly what happened, because he's like, I've heard that, certain moods and kind of vibes will bring in these creatures and such. And I said, I've heard that as well, and I'm not really sure. I know people will be like, oh, 100%, well, we don't know, it's an opinion and a theory. But I've heard it, and I agree that, like I say, with the Appalachia region, people are amazingly nice, and because of the government, there's a lot of poverty there because of the United States government and the companies they backed for coal mining. And then with that came the big pharma epidemic and the doctors prescribing hillbilly heroin. So I think that there's a big reason why there was an uptick for a long period of time of multitude of creatures being spotted in that region. So I do believe that, there is something that draws them in. I wouldn't say, just because your day was going crappy, it's going to happen. But, I don't know. So he said, it was just very uncomfortable. It was muggy. The bugs were out. It was, but we were having fun. We were doing what we love to do. And I was like, you should start your own YouTube channel on this and start doing it. You and Grayson. And he said, we probably should. I was like, well, if you do, let me know and I'll push your channel, because I'm sure people would love to see two young two young men going out in the wilds on their kayaks and exploring shit. I said, that's cool. So they had gotten to the Mound Island, which is in Bottle Creek, and there are many little islands in that area. It's a multitude of just little islands. So they get there, they pull their kayaks up, and they're just hanging out, and for some reason he had the idea. He said, I got bored. He said, we were there for a little while, He said, and something popped into my head that just said, hey, let's go check that other island out. This is kind of boring. There's not, a whole lot to see here except, these 18 mounds and stuff. And so he suggested, let's go and check that island out. Now, that's one of the things he really wanted to emphasize is he was not thinking about that island prior to. It was almost like it was implanted in his thinking. Because he only saw it that once as they were going by it. And there was nothing remarkable about it for it to stand out or anything like that. He hadn't even thought about it as they were going by it. That's how unremarkable it was. But it was like something just put that, let's go and check that island out. And he brought it up with Grayson, and Grayson's like, yeah, let's do that. Let's just chill here for a few more minutes and I want to take some pictures and check some things out, but let's go check it out after. And as they start to put their kayaks in the water, Jasper gets this feeling of, we shouldn't go. And he's instantly, as he's thinking we shouldn't go, and he's almost thinking this from the bottom of his, soul, like, we shouldn't go. But then it was almost like his brain was fighting with his instincts. And once again, it felt like something had put, just go, it'll be okay, in his head. And he remembers those two things, to where it was almost as if these sentences were put into his brain to draw them in. And these feelings that he's getting, like his almost fighting with his inner self, that's what he assumed at that point. He's never felt, they've actually gone to other locations that are and have been paranormally researched. And he's never had anything like that happen to him ever, where he feels like this kind of inner turmoil. They get back into Bottle Creek, and they proceed to kayak toward the island. And he sees the island. They see the island, and he said that, he goes, it was almost like I was getting pulled in. I started to kayak a little faster. I wanted to get to the island, but I didn't. He said, so we get out, and, like Grayson said, we pulled our kayaks right up onto the shore. That way, if any kind of sudden water shift, their kayaks wouldn't be pulled into the water, and you lose you lose your kayak or canoe out here, you're SOL, you know. So they pull them up and they proceed to walk. They can still see their kayaks behind them. And instantly, that almost immediately, as they peered back to see their kayaks and to see how far they had walked, that scream happened. And the way Grayson and Jasper both explained it to me was that it did sound just like a female screaming like she had been hurt. There was no kind of any kind of like mimicking quality to it. It was just like, you know, what a girl or female would sound as if they had been hurt. And yesterday when I talked with Grayson, you know, he had said that listening to experiences and stuff and hearing these, you know, creatures that use these screams that sound like babies or women, that there's almost like a strange, unnatural sound to it. And also there's not just one scream. Usually it's a multitude of them. But it was that only one scream. And Grayson looks at Jasper and says, "We got to go check it out. You know, that's a woman hurt." And Jasper agreed. He said it sounded just like what a female would sound if they had been hurt, like if they had stepped on a nail or if, you know, something, they were being attacked or whatever. It was truly terrifying. He said, but I fought hard to not go check it out. He said a huge part of me said that it was a woman hurt. But the reason why I said, no, let's go, was because I started to remember how I felt back on Mound Island. And how the false sense of security or because they felt safe. He felt safe on Mound's Island. But that kind of, let's go check this out. He said, let's go check this other island out. And his inner turmoil. He instantly started to think about that. And that's when he was like, we got to go. You know, let's get out of here. Grayson wins the kind of argument, and that's when they go and walk back to their kayaks, turn them around so they're facing the water, and they can immediately depart quickly if need be. Now, when they do that, he's thinking something is going to happen. And as he's thinking something's going to happen, there's a voice that he clearly remembers hearing, a voice that literally said, yeah, something is going to happen. But it was almost not human sounding. It had like a monstrous tone to it, if that makes any sense. He instantly froze at that point. That's when Grayson had continued to walk and turned to see Jasper still lagging behind. He said, that's when that happened. He said, and then we kept walking because I wasn't going to let Grayson walk up on his own. He said, and then we heard that growl. He goes, I heard the growl first. He goes, but it wasn't, I don't think it was out loud. He said, Grayson looks back at me. I had just had that kind of voice in my head. I heard a growl. I look up and there's that creature that we call the crawler on this channel. And it was sitting there on this tree limb with its, the same way Grayson described it, its hands cupped and its feet cupped with large kind of claws and staring down at them. It was this milky, he said, he described it as a milky, disgusting, milky white color. He said the eyes were just this weird kind of black. He said, I've always heard, people say they're pits for eyes. He said, that makes sense if you think of what a peach pit would look like or a fruit pit. But being jet black and glossy. He said the eyes looked so sickly and disgusting in regards to the skin color. The skin color was this dull, white, milky color. But the eyes were this shiny, like obsidian black. And they just take off running. Well, actually Grayson says, hey, back up slowly. And as they are walking backward, Grayson is the one that sees the others coming at them. And he tells Jasper to run. And as he's running, they're hauling ass. He can see his kayak. He can see Grayson's kayak, and he pushes off into the water. And this voice, that same, yeah, something is, or yeah, it is going to happen. That same voice in his brain says, don't go. We won't hurt you. Not like how I just said it, but this aggressive, monstrous, gross tone. And that's when they start kayaking and they hear that splash and they look back and they see that one in the water. And they're maybe 200-300 feet off that island thing. And he gets another kind of in his brain, I can't help. He doesn't know what that meant. I can't and help. But they kept kayaking. And as he was going further away from the island, he said it was almost like, and he said there's people that aren't going to believe this. He goes, and I don't care. He goes, because they don't know me. He goes, and I don't know them. He goes, and I don't owe anyone an explanation. He goes, I'm sharing what happened to me. He said, but it was almost like these things were talking to me. And as we got further and further away from the island, it was like it sounded almost as if someone was changing a radio station. That he could just get bits and pieces of what they wanted him to hear. They obviously get home safely. And he doesn't tell Grayson any of this. He actually didn't tell Grayson any of this until he heard the experience. Grayson said, hey, I want to share this with this channel. Do you mind? And he said, no, I don't mind, Then he had heard it and got called up his best friend and said, listen, I got to talk to you. So the night that they get home and Grayson's at his home, Jasper's at his house, he said he was plagued with nightmares. He was just of alien-like creatures standing around his bed and a kind of warm, glowing white light filling his room. But yet these alien grays standing around his bed. He said that he would wake up sweating and such, and that it carried on for a couple of days after the Bottle Creek Indian Mound event. Now, he said at one point during all of these sleep paralysis nightmares that his shoulders, he woke up one morning and his shoulders were hurt. He said that it felt like he had fallen out of bed and landed on his arm, and it was just really stiff, to the point where he couldn't, if you hurt your shoulder, you have a hard time doing that. He said there was a point where I couldn't bring it over my head and go all the way around. And he said, I think there's more to what happened. I think that whatever happened on that island, maybe we don't know the whole story of what happened to us. He said, or, and I said, or you were abducted at home afterward. And he said, I was thinking the same thing. He said, but I don't know. He said, I don't, the nightmares and paralysis and whatever you want to call it has stopped. But he said that those dreams were so vivid, and everything that occurred during that period of time, the talking, the communicating was so terrifying, that, and he just had bottled that up. So we get off the phone, and I said, have you ever thought about hypnosis? I said, there may be a possibility that something happened to you. I said, I don't think anything happened to you and Grayson on that island. I don't think you lost time or whatnot, because the way he describes it and the way you describe it, there doesn't seem to be like a time loss. But I really think that, with these nightmares that you're having, this sleep paralysis that you're having, this might not be a nightmare. It might not be sleep paralysis. This may be a real event that happened to you and occurred to you at your home. I said, have you ever had nightmares about, gray aliens ever? And he said, no, never. He said, I don't even, he said, I believe in aliens. I believe in this kind of stuff. He said, but I'm not fascinated by it, so I don't look into it. He said, I'm fascinated by urban exploration. He goes, I'm fascinated by, old lore, urban legends and stuff like that. He said, but no. And I said, well, talk with Grayson and maybe think about hypnosis. Maybe he can help you figure out what and why you're having these horrific dreams, if they are indeed dreams. So when I let him go, I text Grayson and I said, "You free?" And I called him up and I told him, I said, "Listen, dude," I said, did he share this with you?" And he said, "Just today." And I'm like, you might want to have a talk with him and see where he stands, mentally on all of this, because I think there may be a strong possibility that he got abducted. And it may have had something to do with you guys going to that island. And he said, I think that as well. He goes, because he kept saying something happened to us on the island, but the only thing that happened where we got chased off by those creatures. He said, I remember the day not looking different. He said there was no time loss whatsoever. Not even a couple of minutes, So Grayson's gonna hopefully talk with Jasper and keep me in the loop on that, because if I started to go down a rabbit hole at that point, because I was like, wow, if these things were communicating with him and drawing him in, he has an experience, he gets away, and then has an abduction experience. What if he had been abducted prior to by these aliens? And that's how those creatures, the crawlers, were able to communicate. And then it brings me to that I strongly now do believe that these crawler creatures were created by the alien agenda, the agenda as we call it, whatever you want to call it. Because, and I've got a picture right here on my corkboard. I'm looking at Aleister Crowley's Lamb, the demonic creature he summoned, right next to a gray alien head. And they look identical. These things are, I believe they are demonic. Dangerous demonic creatures. Let's get into the next part. All right, so I did ask Grayson to keep me in the loop and to encourage Jasper to possibly look into hypnosis, but at least talk with Grayson to try and figure out what happened. I said, if you need anything, if I can do anything, let me know, and please keep me in the loop. So now to the next phone call that I had. Not a lot of information with this one, but it is, there is a lot of information, but it's an ongoing experience that this man is having. And it's friggin' tragic, to be honest with you. It's sad. And I feel terrible for this man. Because of the amount of pain he's in going through this. So, to start off with, this is an ongoing experience this man is having. And it's a multitude of things involving Dogman and the paranormal. He is a retired police officer. He wants to remain anonymous. He asked me not to even create a name for him because it wouldn't be right or real. I agreed. I said, that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah. He's from Indiana. He lives in Indiana. An undisclosed area in Indiana. Population somewhere between 9,000 to 15,000 people in a small village/city. He lives in kind of the American dream area. Sidewalk in front of his home. He's got about an acre of land. Neighbors have an acre of land next to him. Fences, behind his home is another neighbor, about an acre of land, their home. Almost identical road behind him, Same setup. He's a widower, newly widowed. His wife passed away very suddenly. She had a stroke, did not regain consciousness, was on life support for about a week till the doctor decided that, the decision was ultimately his, but he made it with himself, the doctor, and his lawyer to take her off life support about 2 years ago. He's got 2 kids. They are grown. They do not live in Indiana. Both successful. Kids of their own. He's, up until the passing of his wife, he had, the every American dream. What everybody dreams of. He's sitting out on it starts out one night about a year ago. And he's sitting on his back deck, ground level deck. No railings, just pressure treated ground level deck. So you can step off of it. And he's got a table, he's got the whole 9 yards. It's got a roof above it, but it's open. So it's not a porch, it's a deck. He's got a ranch home, sliding glass doors. He's sitting, he doesn't drink, he doesn't do drugs, retired police officer. He's having a cup of coffee and smoking his tobacco pipe. It's dark out, it's early fall. It's a little chilly. He goes to light his pipe, get his matches off the little stand by his chair. As he lights his pipe, as he's getting the matches, you got to turn his head just a little. He's got the sliding glass doors and the blinds that are behind him on the inside of the house. He sees movement. He sees them kind of move. Now there's no wind in his home. The door's shut. And he turns to look, and he sees this grayish figure gone. He's like, holy shit, someone broke into my house. During this time, prior to that, he is literally thinking about speeding up his inevitable future. Joining his wife. And that's just, to me, it's so sad. My parents have been married for 50-something years, and it's just so, to hear him share this was heartbreaking. He sees this shadow figure, not even a shadow figure, it is, but he doesn't know that at the point. He sees this movement and he gets up and he goes in quickly. He's got a lockbox in his kitchen and he's got firearms all around his home. He's an ex-police officer, so gets his pistol out of the lockbox and clears his home. Nothing's there. He's like, what the hell? He's like, maybe I'm that depressed, maybe I'm that depressed. And he sits back down, puts his pistol on the stand that he's sitting next to, takes a sip of his coffee, lights his pipe. Now he's sitting, looking out at his backyard. Separating his backyard from his neighbor's backyard is those post and beam fences. So it's, not a gated fence or whatever. And it's not one of those high, it's like 4 feet tall, wooden, easily accessible to your neighbor's backyard. Everybody gets along around this area, so it's, and he's looking and he sees these 2 red dots, maybe 3/4 of the way to his neighbor's house. And he's like, what the hell did they put up in their backyard? He's thinking maybe they got some sort of, but he's like, he looks at that fence and he looks at that and he's like, they're about 4 feet off the ground. What the hell is that? Why would they put reflectors? Why would reflectors be reflecting light when there's no light? Blink, blink. They blink. He's like, instantly he goes, holy shit, those are eyes. Red eyes. He's like, what the hell has red eyes? Puts his hand on his pistol and he's looking and he's watching it. And he sees the eyes go up into the air. And he sees them start to come closer to his fence. They get to that fence and they stay there for a minute. And he's looking, he's trying to squint, he's trying to see, trying to figure out, but it's dark. There's no lights in the back. He does have a light inside the house that will light up just past his deck. It's not going to light up his whole backyard, and it's definitely not going to light up his neighbor's backyard. So he's sitting there. He's looking at these eyes and he sees them go down and then quickly just almost vanish for a split second. And then he hears this kind of thud. And they are on his side of the fence now, standing at this full height of what he's guesstimating at maybe 6-7 feet. It jumped the fence and landed. So he's like, what in the hell? But he's intelligent enough to know that, hey, I'm older. I don't want to really mess with this thing, whatever it is. I'm going to go inside real quick. Key thing. The closest patch of woods that is even large enough or remotely large enough to possibly house a Dogman or Bigfoot is a couple of miles from his house. There's some cornfields beyond his neighbor's road that is behind him, but no woods. He goes inside, locks the slider, turns the light on, and it doesn't illuminate much. It's where the light would end is kind of like right where his deck would begin. And he's keeping an eye on these eyes, these red eyes. But because the light's on, he can't see very well. So he turns it off. And he sees them moving closer, but they are now 3 to 4 feet, about the same height as that fence. And then they get right up to his deck. And they grow. And he turns that light on, And what is in front of him is every bit of a 7-foot tall, what he in his brain called werewolf or hellhound. He's thinking, holy shit, there's a werewolf in my backyard. It is a charcoalish gray black color with just hellfire eyes. The hair isn't even sparse. It's about the uniform thickness. It's uniform thickness all around. You know, it's not patchy in places. And he's looking at it and he sees its like lip, like a German Shepherd when they smile. I say that because when I was growing up, we had one, and she would always smile in her teeth. And it shows him his teeth, and it steps up onto his deck, and he can hear it. He hears that wood kind of move or adjust to this thing's weight, because it's got to be 400 pounds. And it starts walking on his deck, getting closer to his sliding glass door. Turns that light off and starts backing away. The blinds are shut, so he really can't see. The only reason why he witnessed this is because he had his head through the blinds. Goes into his den and proceeds to get his shotgun. 12-gauge shotgun and a box of slugs. Brings it out. As he's coming out, he's loading that thing up quick. And he pulls the blinds open, and he's got that 12-gauge right up, just almost simultaneously. Boom, up. Pointed right at this thing. Now it is 6 feet away from his door, just right there. He's getting a better view of it. It is everything that he shared with me, that grayish charcoal, black, red eyes, large ears. Its chest is this grayish kind of charcoal color, and there's just a lot of black on it. It sees the gun and kind of turns its head, like almost like a serial killer in the horror movies do, you know? Just cocks its head. Drops to all fours, walks up and turns, and sprints off the deck. Hammers its way through his backyard, jumps that fence, and what he could make of it at the end of it, because it's dark now, goes into the neighbor's yard. He, shocked, stands there for a few minutes, goes out, gets his pipe, gets his coffee cup, shuts the door, locks it, kind of is trying to decompress, lays down for the night. About an hour and a half later, starts to go to bed, and he hears this howl. And he's laying there, and it instantly, like, rejuvenated him. He's like, holy shit, that's loud. Pops his head up and looks out the windows, and the howl was so loud that a few of the neighbor next to him and the neighbor behind him had actually turned their lights on. Like, it had woken them up. So he looks out, and there it is, standing in the corner of his yard, his side of the fence, just staring right at him. Like it knew where he was. He goes to bed, and he has like this strange dream about his wife. She's talking to him, She tells him, that she's here with him, this, and that. And that, stay safe, whatnot. He gets up the next morning and he has the idea of finding a, what are they called? He called it a fortune teller, but that's not what they're called. I couldn't remember the name of it. The fortune teller, I guess that's what he called it. Where he started to look online for, these people that can help you communicate with loved ones. And he finds a woman that is a few towns over, and he goes and makes the appointment, goes and visits her a couple days later. Nothing happens during this period of time. And he goes in and sits with her, and she had said, your wife is still with you and watching you. She saw you the other day. And he's like, when? And she said, she was with you the other day. She was with you when a large dog was in your backyard. And he's like, okay. He's putting it together. He's like, he goes, I remember the dog. He goes, but I didn't see my wife. And, she's like, she was with you. She was right outside or right inside the door watching you. She was in watching that dog. And he goes, okay. And she said, she wants you to stay alive and have a happy rest of your life. That she misses you and she'll be there with you. Okay. And he is happy. He's kind of, and he then leaves and he goes to like a everything store, a Walmart, Sam's Club, gets a Ouija board. Never played with one in his life. Never used one. You shouldn't say played with one. Never used one in his life. Gets home, sits in his kitchen, starts to think about what the medium had said, not a fortune teller, and then realizes that that gray figure was his wife, or so he thinks. And he's using the Ouija board by himself. Now, I don't condone anyone using a Ouija board. I have used them multiple times. I've had bad things happen. I don't think anything good comes from them. I've used dowsing rods. I've got all this paranormal equipment. If you've watched any of my videos when I went to the Conjuring house, I love it. But Ouija boards are a completely different tool. They are not a tool meant for use. And they're not a game. It proceeds to tell him that that figure that was in his home that night was not his wife, that she is there with him. He can't see her no matter how hard she tries, but she'll make an attempt. That creature that was in the backyard and that shadow figure that was in the home are there for him and her. They want his soul. This is what the board said. And it wants her to come back. she's already deceased. He can't figure out what that means. So as me and him are talking, I'm like, listen, you're a grown man, but I'm not going to tell you anything, but you probably shouldn't play with that Ouija board. It's not a toy. They're dangerous, probably get rid of it. And he said, I can't. It's like my conduit to my wife. I'm talking to her. And I said, you might not be talking to her. And he's like, well, it spelled out her middle name and this and that. And I said, well, I've heard of people using Ouija boards by themselves and with other people, obviously. I know my oldest daughter has tried to use a Ouija board by herself and had some weird shit happen, but you shouldn't use them. And recently, none of his kids live with him. He doesn't have company. He gets out of the shower, and so, I don't know if that really was a Dogman. And I said, it was physical. It clearly was physical because he saw it jump. He heard it hit the ground, right? He heard it on his deck. So maybe you've got a shadow figure in your home. You've got, I honestly, I said this to him. I said, I think what you may have inadvertently done was invited some sort of evil, bad spirits, bad presence, whatever, into your life by thinking that negative, and I said, it's a sin to do something like that, to speed up the inevitable. We all pass, but and I get rid of the Ouija board, but try to pray. I know it's hard. And I did say this to him, pray. He's seen the eyes outside of his home periodically. The only one time that he had the face-to-face was that one night. The shadow figures are, and it's always one, it's about the same height and build and whatever, but it's almost the same. He said this, it's almost the same color. It's not black, it's like this grayish color. It's almost the same color as that Dogman or that hellhound. But I hope that he gets rid of that Ouija board. There's nothing good that comes from them. I have one still to this day in my house, but it's actually encased in a curio cabinet with blessed things all around it and on it and in it, but they are nothing good comes from them. I just can't get rid of the one that I have because it has sentimental value. It was my grandmother's. And she actually, when my dad and my uncle went to Vietnam, two different areas of Vietnam. They didn't go together. But it said she asked if my dad and my uncle would be okay. This is my mom's mom. And she said one of the two, the board said one of the two are going to be hurt. And it wasn't my dad. It was my uncle. My uncle had been, they were doing some sort of mission and they were walking. And a guy stepped on a landmine that was like 3 or 4 people ahead of him. And my uncle caught shrapnel all in his legs. Got Purple Heart and left Vietnam. So, I mean, it was right. One of the two. There's nothing good that can come of them, though. And I hope by you listening to this, and I encourage people to respectfully give him some positivity. Because I think that's what he needs, is some positivity. And I really think what he did was he brought some sort of demonic energy into his home by thinking what he was thinking. Anyway, with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go. And give us a place to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is treated with the respect we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their life someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth. And God bless you all.